What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host, and my name is John. And this week we are back with episode 67, where we will be analyzing and predicting the UFC on ESPN Plus 13 card, headlined by Jermaine Randamie versus Aspen Ladd, going down in Sacramento, California this Saturday night. This is a 12-fight card that will be aired entirely on ESPN Plus, with the 6 prelim fights starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and the main card kicking off at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Looking at the betting lines for these matchups, and I'm going to tell you that they are filled with value. Personally, I already have about 7 or 8 bets on fighters' money lines for this card, so I will be sharing with you which fights I have bet on as the podcast goes on, and I will give you the reasoning why I'm betting on these people, of course. So with that being said, we are going to start things off with the first fight of the evening, which takes place in the bantamweight division. We have Benito Lopez, who is 9-1, taking on Vince Moraes, who is 9-3. The opening betting line for this one was Benito Lopez, the minus 265 favorite, to Vince Moraes plus 185. Right now, the line has flipped, and we are now seeing Moraes minus 140, Lopez plus 120. Pretty shocked at the amount of money that has come in on Vince Moraes, pushing him from a plus 185 underdog on July 7th. And just a few days later, he is sitting at minus 145. So the amount of people and the amount of money that has come in on Moraes in these past few days is something to look at, because it seems like the public is on Moraes. And I think that the public was on the right side of things with that opening line. But where the line is at right now, I do not think there is much value left on Vincent Moraes. I think this is a very close matchup, and that's why we saw the line flip. So getting down to this matchup, we have Benito Lopez, who is a team alpha male fighter. He's a very fast starter who likes to come at you with some unorthodox techniques like head kicks and flying knees. He really likes blitzing you, making you uncomfortable, and trying to touch that chin right away. And he's had some success with it in the UFC. His fight versus Albert Moraes was a great fight where they were dropping each other multiple times. In round 1 of that fight, Moraes dropped Lopez with a jab, and Lopez was able to drop Moraes with flying knees a few times. He eventually won that fight by decision as well, and Lopez lost his undefeated record in his last fight against Manny Bermudez. Bermudez came in overweight for that fight, but was still able to take down Benito Lopez. Lopez scrambled back to his feet for a short amount of time, but was eventually dragged back down to the canvas and tapped out with a guillotine choke. So Lopez got that first loss out of the way, and now he's looking to rebound here versus Vince Moraes. Moraes is coming off of a win over Alamin Zahabi. It was a great performance where his boxing looked really sharp, his cardio looked good. He was able to avoid the takedown and ground threat of Zahabi and outstrike Zahabi and really pick it up in the third round of that fight. And Moraes also went to the decision with Song Yadong, who we saw in action last week, who has massive power. And Moraes had a competitive fight with him. He was outstruck for the first 2 rounds, but Moraes found his range and picked up the output in round 3 like he did versus Zahabi, and was able to win round 3 versus Yadong. So Moraes is very good. I've been impressed with his boxing. He has some decent kicks, but boxing is really his bread and butter. He's got some power in that right hand. He's got a really good rear uppercut as well. The only problem with Moraes is that he needs to be moving forward to be effective. When he's getting pushed back like he was versus Song Yadong, he was not nearly as effective as a striker as he is moving forward. So look for Moraes to be moving forward in this fight, and Lopez is too, and that's where these guys are going to collide. I think Moraes should be the better boxer in this fight, but Lopez is going to be the better kicker, have the better knees, and just be the more explosive, powerful striker. But with Lopez's chin problems, getting dropped by that jab versus Albert Moraes, I think that Vince Moraes has a chance of touching that chin as well, just like Albert did. So this is going to be a hell of a fight. I really expect these guys to collide and start throwing down from bell to bell for as long as it lasts. I could see one of these guys knocking each other out, but I ultimately think that this one will go to the decision, where Lopez might win the first round of the fight, but Moraes is going to get that range. point. She's going to figure out Lopez. He's going to have that cardio edge as the fight goes later. And I'm going to pick Vince Morales to win a decision 29-28 in this one. The next fight takes place in the women's strawweight division. We have Livia Renata Souza, who is 13-1, taking on Brianna Van Buren, who is 8-2. The opening betting line for this one was Souza, the favorite, at -170, Van Buren, the +130 underdog. Right now, we are seeing the line flip: Van Buren -130, Souza +110. So another line flip in this fight. And I agree where the action has come in. I am favoring Brianna Van Buren in this fight. And I hadn't even heard of Van Buren until a few days ago when I started taping this card, but she has been making some waves in Invicta. Van Buren was actually the winner of the strawweight tournament, the one-night tournament that Invicta had just a few months ago, where she took out two opponents in one-round fights. And that was UFC vet Juliana Lima and Manjit Kolklar, who she submitted. And then in the main event, she took on Kaylin Curran in a 3-minute fight, and she was able to get a rear naked choke in round 2 of that fight. So I have been very impressed with what I've seen from Van Buren so far. She has some decent striking on the feet. She has some good kicks that she throws at her opponents to close the distance and really set up her takedowns, which are her bread and butter. She's got a great blast double leg takedown. Once she gets you on the ground, she can keep you down. She's very heavy in side control, and she is mean with ground and pound. She'll smash you with ground and pound, force you to give up your back, snatch that rear naked choke or that arm bar, which are both submissions that she has hit in Invicta against her opponents as well. Her last loss was actually 4 years ago, and that fight, you can really see the difference in styles that her game has adapted. This fight was against Amy Montenegro, and in that fight, she tried to take down Montenegro against the cage. She would push her back to the cage, and then end up in those scrambles against the cage, or those grinding clinch fests against the cage, and she was not able to get the takedowns like she's used to. And that's when she adapted her game and started shooting more blast double legs in the center of the cage and getting her opponents on her back easier. And ever since then, she's had a massive amount of success. Her ground game looks really vicious. She knows how to Dagestani handcuff people, hand trap, all types of advanced ground skills from Brianna Van Buren. But getting over to her opponent, Livia Renata Souza, is also a very skilled ground fighter. She's a black belt, but she's a small strawweight for the weight class, and you saw that in the last fight against Sarah Frota, and she was outsized a lot in that fight, not only by her opponent's height, but her opponent missed weight by 7 pounds for that matchup. So she was almost in an entire different weight class, and Livia Renata Souza was still able to win that fight via decision. So very impressed with what Souza has been able to accomplish so far in the UFC. She tapped out Alex Chambers in her UFC debut. The way she was able to take down that bigger opponent in Sarah Frota, who is also a very skilled ground fighter, it was just so impressive. She just used technique to outclass size, and that's what she's going to have to do in this matchup as well. She will be the smaller fighter in that cage. Van Buren should be stronger, should be much more physical when she gets on top position on the ground. So Souza's sweeps and her get-ups are going to have to be on point. She's going to have to be threatened with submissions to get back to her feet. And this is stuff that she has all done before, but she has been taken down in the past. I believe Frota got her down when they fought as well, but she was able to get back to her feet very well in that fight. But I expect Van Buren's pressure to be much better than Frota. I expect Van Buren to be throwing kicks right away, to be pressuring Souza. Souza does have some good striking. She has had some success with striking against different opponents, specifically in Invicta. She actually knocked out Hamasaki, the champion, with her boxing and just pressured her right off the bat. And Souza has fought the full 5 rounds multiple times before, most notably against Angela Hill. So she is the much more experienced fighter. She's got the better record, but I still think Brianna Van Buren is going to win this fight. I think Van Buren pressures her right off the bat, get that double leg takedown, and really just dominates on the ground. I think that the size and the strength and the pressure of Van Buren is just going to be too much. Souza's not going to be able to create space, threaten with submissions, and Van Buren has stayed safe from submissions from Lima and dangerous ground fighters like Kaylin Curran as well. So I imagine that Van Buren will avoid the submission, and she will be able to outstrike Souza on the feet and be able to get the takedowns and get top position versus Souza. So I see Van Buren winning a decision in this one, 30-27, and I actually give it a good possibility that Van Buren gets a finish as well with either a ground and pound from mount or back position, or possibly gets a submission on the black belt Souza as well. So the pick is going to be Brianna Van Buren to get her UFC debut win in this one. The next fight takes place in the bantamweight division. We have Pyongyang Liu, who is 15-4, taking on Jonathan Martinez, who is 10-2. The opening betting line for this one was Pyongyang minus 285, Martinez plus 205. Right now we are seeing Liu minus 145, Martinez plus 125. So line margins have tightened up, and I agree with it. Where that opening line was set was way too high in Pyongyang's favor. This is a much closer fight than that. I honestly think this is a 50-50 fight. I think both of these guys have decent striking, decent grappling, and they're both liable to get in scramble type of fights where they're mixing in the takedowns and striking nonstop. There's a lot of wrestling, a lot of clinching, submission attempts in them. And, they're both very well-rounded fighters who are deserving to be in the UFC, of course. Really looking forward to this fight. So let's get down to how these two match up. Liu is a very strong striker. He has good distance management and footwork on the feet, but his technique is a little bit lacking in the boxing. I think his actually all of his strikes, really, I feel like he just doesn't really commit to his strikes a lot. He throws them out there and flashes the strikes, but it doesn't seem like he really wants to knock anybody out. It seems like he wants to set up the takedown and really just win on the scorecards. So and Liu's also had some trouble with the rules of MMA. I mean, in his 2 UFC fights so far, he's thrown an illegal up kick. He's been warned for hitting opponents to the back of the head, and he's also been warned for throwing 12-6 elbows. So look for Liu to possibly commit another foul in this fight and maybe get a point taken. If he didn't get any points taken in the first couple of fights, but that's something to worry about. If you're betting on a fighter and he has repeatedly committed fouls in his 2 UFC fights so far, you got to be worried about getting a point deducted at some point. So Liu also has some problems in the fight IQ aspect of things. He jumped guillotine on Martin Day when they fought, and he was outstruck for the majority of that fight. He did have some success in dropping Martin Day in round 3, but round 1 I thought he was out-volumed and slightly lost that round. Round 2, he was shooting takedowns from halfway across the cage and getting his shots stuffed, and got dominated on the feet versus Martin Day, and then was able to come back and win round 3 with that knockdown. So that was a close fight, and honestly, I think that Liu got a little bit of a gift handed to him in that decision. I thought Martin Day won that fight, but Liu looked good against Damian Stasiak. He was able to get off of his back in that fight. He was able to outstrike Stasiak. His cardio looked good in that fight. So moving on to Martinez, he's mostly a submission guy. Most of his wins are by submission off of his back, but he also is a pretty decent southpaw striker. His boxing is decent. It seems like he also lacks a little bit of technique. He has a good left kick as well, and his straight left hand is just not good. I've seen some slow motion clips of it from his last fight versus Luigi Buren, and it just looked ugly. So the one thing about Martinez is that he makes a lot of mistakes on the ground. He leaves some room for error. He will put himself in some bad positions. He'll end up on bottom when he shouldn't. But luckily, he constantly scrambles for position. He is always getting up to his feet if it's a possibility, always threatening with submission and making some space with his opponent. So if these two end up on the ground, I give the edge to Martinez. I think that he will end up in top position in the scrambles. And I think that he is actually a submission threat on the ground for Lou. On the feet, I expect Lou to be the better striker. He definitely has the better boxing. I think that he just has a little bit more polished striking all around, and his movement and footwork is certainly better. So this is a really close fight. These two are really evenly matched up. Everything I've been saying so far has alluded to the fact that it is a 50-50 fight. And with the betting line being plus 125 for one guy, I think there's a little bit of value on Martinez. And especially if you got Martinez where he opened at plus 205. Congratulations to anybody who got that line, because a lot of money's come in on him so far. So with this being a close, split decision type of fight, I'm gonna side with Martinez, because I think he's more likely to end up in top position and win rounds when it counts. I think he has the better cardio and a little bit better of the IQ as well. So the pick is going to be Martinez to win a 29-28 split decision. The next fight takes place in the featherweight division. We have Darren Elkins, who is 24-7, taking on Ryan Hall, who is 7-1. The opening betting line for this one was Ryan Hall, the minus 140 favorite, to Darren Elkins, the plus 100 underdog. Right now, we are seeing Hall minus 115, Elkins minus 105. So line margins have tightened up. This is almost a pick'em fight. Money has been coming in on both sides of this fight, and rightfully so, because it is a very close fight. So the return of Ryan Hall in this fight, his last fight, he picked up that Emmett roll heel hook over BJ Penn. It was a beautiful technique in that he executed in that fight. But Hall's style. He is a jiu-jitsu black belt, world-class jiu-jitsu guy. Has transitioned over to MMA, but has really stuck to his jiu-jitsu game. He is not really too interested in striking, and that results in a lot of his fights being a little boring, where he is flopping to his back, pulling guard, trying to play the leg lock game. That's how the fight ended up versus Gray Maynard, who is a tough wrestler, sort of like Darren Elkins, where Hall was throwing a lot of kicks and flopping to his back, and Maynard just did not want to engage and was constantly moving away the entire time. So Hall was trying to engage, and he was landing kicks, and Maynard was moving backwards and didn't want to engage. So that's why Hall won the decision in that fight. And I think that's how this fight will end up going as well. Elkins is an incredibly tough guy. He can take an insane amount of damage and still come back and win, which he has done multiple times before versus Mirsad Bektic and Michael Johnson, most notably. On the feet, he is not very technical. He tends to get lit up with punches very often in his fights, but luckily for him, he's not facing a striker in this fight at all. I mean, I don't think Ryan Hall throws many punches at all in his fights. The only real strikes he throws are leg kicks and high kicks, because he's not worried about being taken down. But he could get taken down in this fight, and Darren Elkins, being that talented wrestler, being good in top position, he might be crazy enough to put Hall on his back and to try to win rounds on top and neutralize the jiu-jitsu of Hall. But if Elkins does that, I think he's in for a long night. I think that Hall is just levels ahead of Elkins on the ground. Even though Elkins is a very great wrestler and has good scrambles and out wrestled Dennis Bermudez when they fought just about 2 years ago. Hall is just such a submission threat from the leg lock game that he plays. I just don't think that Elkins, even though he's probably been training for it for the past few months, I don't think he has any idea what he's in store for. Hall will grab a hold of your leg, and he will tear your Achilles off before you even know that you're in a submission. That's how dangerous he is. So I see this fight being very similar to the Maynard fight, where Elkins is moving backwards. Elkins is obviously going to try to knock him out with punches on the feet, and Hall's going to be moving backwards, throwing kicks, especially leg kicks, because Elkins has struggled with leg kicks before. And Elkins is very heavy on the feet. He plots forward in a very predictable way. So look for Hall to be pulling those Emmett rolls like he did last fight. Look for Hall to be playing the De La Riva game or the open guard game, trying to get single leg X, trying to get X guard, all different types of jiu-jitsu positions to eventually get that leg lock, which is really his bread and butter. So I'm picking Hall to win this fight. When I look at these guys, I look at their intelligence levels and their career so far. So Hall has mostly competed in jiu-jitsu, has only one loss in MMA, and has taken very little damage throughout his MMA career. Meanwhile, Elkins has a very long MMA career and is notorious for taking damage. Just insane amount of punishment and blood and cuts and punches that he absorbs on a daily basis. Now, I just don't think that Elkins at this point in his career is smart enough, and nothing against the guy's personal intelligence. I'm talking about his fight IQ. I don't think he is going to be able to fight to avoid Hall's strength, which is going to be the submission grappling. So it's a possibility that Elkins ends up in top position, neutralizes the submission of Hall, and wins this fight via decision, possibly even getting a knockout on Hall. But I think Hall is too smart to avoid. There is going to be just too smart to avoid that top position. He's not going to get stuck on his back. He's going to not accept bottom position. He's going to be attacking legs constantly. I just don't think that Hall is capable of being put on his back and kept there, because he's just so good off of it. So I think Elkins is in for a long night. We could be in for a stalemate type of fight, and the judges may give it to Elkins because he's from Sacramento. He'll have the crowd behind him. He might be landing some better strikes, and Hall might be just really scared to engage and not commit to anything because he wants to get the leg locks. It's a very likely this fight ends up in a type of stalemate, but I'm going to actually pick Hall to submit Darren Elkins. I just don't think Elkins can avoid the leg lock game for too long, and eventually Hall will entangle him and tap him out with a leg lock. I'm going to go with a heel hook. So the pick is going to be Hall by submission. The next fight takes place in the women's bantamweight division. We have Juliana Pena, who is 8-3, taking on Nico Montano, who is 4-2. The opening betting line for this one was Pena, the minus 155 favorite, Montano plus 115. Right now we are seeing Pena minus 170, Montano plus 150. So both of these women coming off of long layoffs. Pena was at one point a very promising title challenger or contender in the bantamweight division, but she had some injuries. She had that loss to Shevchenko, and most recently she had a baby and has not fought for about 30 months. Now Nico Montano came off the season of The Ultimate Fighter, was in store, beat Roxanne Matafari and won the UFC flyweight title, and then had some injury problems, eventually got matched up to face Shevchenko, but was unable to make weight and had to vacate her title, or was actually stripped of her title back at UFC 228, and has not fought since. So we have Pena coming off a 30-month layoff and Montano coming off of a 20-month layoff. And the biggest factor in this fight is Montano moving up to 135 pounds. I mentioned that she did not make weight for her fight with Shevchenko and has been forced to move up, and that's just going to be it's going to be bad for her, because Pena is going to be a lot stronger and bigger than Montano. Juliana Pena is a girl who out-grappled Kat Zingano. Had a little bit of early adversity versus Zingano, a close first round, but eventually Pena figured Zingano out and was getting top position and keeping Kat on her back for rounds 2 and 3 and won that fight. She had some nasty ground and pound. She had good takedowns, and she is pretty hard to submit off of her back as well. The only girl who's been able to get her has been Shevchenko, with just a beautiful armbar from guard off of her back that not very many women will be able to pull off. Certainly not Nico Montano. No disrespect to her, but Montano, she's a really good fighter. I kind of thought she wasn't much, because she kind of had a bad reputation around the MMA community. Everyone thought she was ducking a fight with Shevchenko, and of course she pulled out of that fight with Shevchenko on weigh-in day, let everybody down there, and has had some pretty crazy things that she said to the media over the past few years. So she's got a bad reputation for herself, but she's actually a very good fighter. She's got good wrestling. Her fight versus Roxanne Matafari was just a great fight. She showed great 5-round cardio in that fight. She has good wrestling. She's got some decent striking as well. She's a southpaw. has a decent left hand, and her fight against Montano De La Rosa, I think, is probably her best performance. She out-clinched De La Rosa in that fight, got the takedown, avoided the submissions of De La Rosa, and really just smashed De La Rosa on the ground, put an absolute beat down on her. So Montano's got good wrestling, good top pressure, good striking, a very well-rounded fighter. I think that she could be a possible title challenger for Shevchenko in the future, but she's got to get that weight figured out. She's got to get back down to her natural weight class in flyweight, because she's just going to be taking on girls who are too big and strong for her at bantamweight. We saw Shevchenko struggle at years for bantamweight against fighters who weren't really on her level, just because they had that little bit of size. We also saw her beat some fighters that were bigger than her, like Pena, with her technique. So it's a very close matchup. Montano certainly could win just by being the more improved fighter. She's been more active, has fought way more recently, and she was one of those women fighters, so she's had, I'd say, 4 or 5 fights since Pena has fought last. But Pena's strength is just crazy, man. The way she was able to get up from side control versus Shevchenko, she was able to reverse position on Zingano. She's just a very talented fighter. Not really much in the striking aspect of things. If this fight stays in the feet, honestly, I think I would favor Montano, but it's not going to. Pena's going to pressure her. She's going to get that takedown, and this fight is destined to end up on the floor, where I think that Pena is just going to have a massive size and strength advantage that Montano isn't going to be able to counter with technique. So unless Pena has had a massive drop-off in strength, and cardio, and grappling abilities since she's had her baby and come off that long few years layoff, then I see Pena dominating this fight, honestly. And it has been mentioned that not many women have come off of having a baby and come back and looked like a good fighter. It's kind of a limited talent pool that we're dealing with, but I think Pena is capable of doing it. At one point, she was a very promising prospect, and I think that she's going to be back to that form on Saturday night. So I expect her to get a 30-27 decision over Nico Montano. The next fight takes place in the featherweight division. We have Andre Fili, who is 19-6, taking on Shimon Moraes, who is 11-3. The opening betting line for this fight was Andre Fili minus 145, Shimon Moraes plus 105. Right now we are seeing Moraes minus 115, Fili minus 105. So a near pick'em now. There is two-way action coming in on this fight, and rightfully so, because this is a hell of a fight. I'm really looking forward to this fight. It's definitely my favorite fight on the card. And where the line opened at Andre Fili, I thought there was some value there. I really like Andre Fili in this spot. So when the money came in on Moraes and pushed Fili to a plus 125 underdog, I was all over that personally. So I've got a 1.5 unit bet on Fili at plus 125, and I like him to win this matchup. And we're seeing that late money come back in on Fili because people are realizing it's a really close fight. I see this fight playing out on the feet mostly. Most of these gentlemen are strikers, although Fili has great offensive wrestling and some pretty decent jiu-jitsu as well. Moraes has good takedown defense, so they're both very well rounded. But let's talk about what both gentlemen do well on the feet. So we'll start with Fili. He's a very long reach, has improved his boxing leaps and bounds in his past few fights. His jab was absolute money versus Miles Jury. He probably landed 50, 70 jabs in that fight. And it was a very strategic fight. He knew that Miles Jury was going to try to wrestle with him. He knew Jury was going to try to counterpunch with him. So Fili just didn't throw many right hands. He didn't overcommit to many shots, and he really just stuck at distance, leg kicked Jury, and hit Jury with jabs and stayed at range. And that's really how he won that fight. Fili was dropped at some point in the second round with a spinning back fist, but he quickly recovered, and he really came back in round 3 and won that fight, or won that round dominantly. So it was probably 1-1 heading into the third, and Fili dug deep, came out and dominated round 3, came on real strong, found his range, started picking it up a little bit. The one thing I will say about Fili is that he needs to throw more combinations. Like I said, that fight was a strategic strategic type of fight where he wanted to stick to jabs, but it kind of cost him at some point where he was only throwing single shots one at a time and not following it up and allowing Miles Jury to counter back on him. And of course, the problem throughout Fili's career has been his chin. He has been knocked out a few times, and we saw that on display with that spinning back fist. He got dropped last fight with a back fist, and that showed that his chin problems are still there. So now getting over to Sheymon Moraes, we are dealing with a former pro Muay Thai fighter. He's got incredible stand-up. He's got real powerful boxing, power in his right hand. He's dropped multiple people with it, specifically Julio Arce. Dropped him, I think, twice in round one of that fight. He's real good in the clinch with that Muay Thai background, throws good slicing elbows in the clinch. His kicks are so fast, man. His switch kick is one of the best in the UFC. I'm talking like Edson Barboza fast. So Moraes is a wild man. He will trade in the pocket with you. He will go toe for toe with you. And his fight with Sodiq Yusuff a few months ago in Philadelphia was an incredible fight. One of the best fights I've got to witness in person and live, where he was getting leg kicked in round one versus Sodiq Yusuff, and eventually started checking leg kicks and adjusting to that. He was getting hit with heavy leg kicks early in that fight, but adjusted, and the leg kick stopped. He started checking them, and Yusuff didn't want any more leg kicks after he felt a few checks. So Moraes lost round one, but came back, found his range in round two, and was really on his way to winning round three and the fight, but he was dropped around the 1 minute mark, ending the round. So 14 minutes into the fight, Yusuff finally touched the chin of Moraes and dropped him, almost finished him. Really incredible that he didn't finish him, honestly. Moraes got a little greedy, throwing a step and elbow, and got dropped with the right hand. So he lost round three of that fight, and a problem with Moraes is round threes. He, in his fight versus Arce, I believe he lost round three. His fight against Matt Sales, he also dropped round three, and one of his losses also came to Zabit Magomed via anaconda choke in round three. So it seems like Moraes has a bit of a cardio issue where he has a bit of a drop off in round three, and I don't know if that's fair to say because he still has not looked totally gassed versus his opponents. He was actually winning round three versus Yusuff before he was dropped, but it just seems like he can't close it out. He can't finish strong in round three. He gets a little reckless, and he's paid for it a few times. So round three with Fili picking it up and winning round three dominantly last fight, and Moraes letting that round three slip away, that could be something to look at, because I think these two are really evenly matched, and we could be looking at a similar scenario to both of their last fights, where it was 1-1 heading into the third round, and they need to win that third round. Fili was able to do it, Moraes wasn't. So I really got to look at that and think that might be a possibility to happen in this matchup. So I'm going to side with Fili in this one. I think that it'll be a really close fight on the feet. I see Fili using that same jab and leg kick that he did in the last fight, and I see Moraes probably having some problems with him. And I see that when Moraes tries to explode with those powerful bursts of offense, I think that we might see some level changes from Fili. He has really good timing on his takedowns that he's been able to take down some really good grapplers with. So look for Fili to level change when Moraes starts throwing power, and with that slight edge on the ground that Fili should have, definitely in the wrestling department. And with the cardio advantage that Fili has, I think this is a 50-50 type of fight, maybe even a slight lean towards Fili. I'd probably cap Fili at -170. So I got that bet on Fili. Congratulations to everybody who got that plus money with me, and I believe that Fili will win this fight 29-28. The next fight takes place in the light heavyweight division. We got Mike Rodrigues, who is 10-3, taking on John Allan, who is 13-5. The opening betting line for this one was Emrod -335, Allan +265. Right now we are seeing Rodrigues -410, Allan +330. So, John Allan making his UFC debut in this one, coming in on short notice for this fight after John Vellante was injured very recently. So, look for Allan to be a little sloppy, honestly, even though his most recent fight was June 28th. That is 2 weeks ago before this card. So he won that fight by knockout in the second round, and I imagine he spent the week after, celebrating, drinking and eating and doing everything that he hasn't for the past couple of weeks, and now he got that short notice call to come into the UFC. So you got to question where his cardio is going to be at. He might have been a little dinged up from that fight. He might have taken some time off. And gotten out of fight mode, and now all of a sudden he got this short notice opportunity in the UFC. Obviously he took it because it's the right move to do, but who knows what type of shape John Allan will be coming in here at. So he did look good in that fight versus Alexandre Silva. He won that fight via knockout versus a dangerous striker. He rocked him with a left hook in that fight and finished him up with some ground and pound and finished him in round 2. Allan has fought on the Tuesday Night Contender Series as well. In that fight, he unfortunately was submitted with a triangle or an armbar versus Vinícius Moreira. And Moreira is a very bad fighter. He is terrible on the feet. Allan was lighting him up with boxing on the feet, digging to the body, lighting him up with punches to the face. But Moreira was still able to get the takedown. He put Allan in some bad spots. He took his back. He went for arm bars, and eventually Moreira got the takedown in round 2 as well. And Allan just couldn't escape. He got to top position eventually after some tight armbar attempts from Moreira, but was tapped out from top position with that triangle. So Allan has had some trouble with the submissions in his UFC career, his MMA career so far, but so has Rodrigues. Rodrigues only loss in the UFC has come to Devin Clark, where he was out-clinched and out-wrestled in that fight. He was put on his back and just didn't really have an answer for Dev Clark's wrestling in that one. So both of these guys are strikers. Rodrigues is a powerful southpaw striker. He's got real good explosive bursts of offense. He's got power in his left hand. He has good flying knees, which is how he knocked out his opponent on the Contender Series, getting into the UFC. His last fight against Adam Milstead, he dropped him with the left hand 30 seconds into the fight, was smashing him with elbows in the ground and in the clinch, and then eventually started attacking that body with teep kicks versus Milstead, and then finished Milstead with a straight left hand to the body followed by a rear knee. Just a beautiful combination to put Milstead out. So I expect these two to trade it out on the feet. Neither guy really likes to offensive wrestle, so I expect it all to be striking in this one. Allan should have the technical boxing and the defense edge, but Rodrigues should have the power and aggression advantage in this one. And that's why I'm going to be leaning with Rodrigues. I think that he just throws with a lot more power than Allan. Allan is kind of like a volume boxer who throws combinations, while Rodrigues likes to explode with single shots and just try to knock you out. So I think at some point Rodrigues does touch the chin of Allan and knock him out. But where the betting line is at right now, at minus 410 for Rodrigues, I think that that's very steep. And honestly, it might even be worth a value bet on Allan, because Allan's got good boxing. He's tough. He can take a shot. And I'm sure he's coming in here, ready to fight on his short notice UFC debut. He's trying to make the most of it, and he's got a good matchup. He's not facing a grappler who he's struggled with. He's facing a striker, and I'm sure he's not scared one bit of Mike Rodrigues. He's going to come in here to throw down. So Allan does have a chance to win. He's not a total bust in this one. I think that there is a little bit of value on Allan at plus 330. So the pick is going to be Rodrigues, but where the line is at now, it's going to be dog or pass. The next fight takes place in the middleweight division. Moving along to the main card in this event, we have Cesar Ferreira, who is 13-7, taking on Marvin Vettori, who is 12-3-1. The opening betting line for this one was Vettori, the minus 170 favorite, Montano plus 130. Right now we are seeing Vettori minus 150, Montano plus 130. So not much movement on this one. Not much action coming in on this fight at all. So starting things off with Cesar Mutanche Ferreira, he's mostly a jiu-jitsu guy, jiu-jitsu black belt, but he actually has very good wrestling. He can blast takedowns very well. He can string together takedowns a few times, maybe go 1 to 2, possibly even 3 attempts in a row, but he's mostly trying to catch you off guard, catch you at good level change times, and blast that double leg on you. Or he even has a good single leg as well. So Ferreira's looking to get you to the ground, and he's looking to be heavy on top and try to get that submission, which he's been able to do to a lot of his opponents as well. But unfortunately, a lot of his opponents have been able to get back to their feet. He's been able to avoid the takedown as well, been able to knock him out on the feet. Ferreira has been dropped, has been knocked out, has been outstruck to a decision. He's really struggled with the striking aspect of things. And in Ferreira's most recent fight was versus the junkyard dog Ian Heinisch, where he was really out-grappled by Heinisch in that fight somehow, which Heinisch came in on short notice as a big underdog versus Ferreira, and Ferreira was, really just outmatched in that one. He was dropped in round 2 of that fight. He was put in some deep armbar attempts in round 1. He was totally outworked in round 3, had his takedowns stuffed. Heinisch got up from his takedowns, and Ferreira was not able to keep top position, and Ferreira really needs top position to win fights. He needs to get you down and he needs to keep you down. He's not the type of guy to get a submission in transition or in a wrestling scramble. He needs to wear on you with pressure, pass your guard, get in mount, get a arm triangle, take your back at a rear naked choke, something like that. He's not the type to snatch submissions. He's not the type to outstrike you. He's looking to take you down, wear you down with pressure, and tap you out. Now, getting over to Vettori, we got he's pretty much like a southpaw. I'd say he's a bit of an anti-wrestler. Like, that's a bit of in his style, is just having good takedown defense and outstriking people on the feet. He can pressure you and outstrike you, like he has done to Vitor Miranda. He did that to Omari Akhmedov in the later rounds of that fight. He was outstruck in round 1 versus Akhmedov. Took a beating, 10-8 beating in that round 1, but was able to come back and wins round 2 and 3 for the draw in that fight. So Vettori can dig deep. He has a little bit of cardio issues. He definitely slows down in round 3, but he's still really hard to take down in round 3. I mean, you saw that in the fight against Antonio Carlos Jr. He had good takedowns throughout that entire fight, especially even in round 3. Even though Carlos Jr. Won round 3 with just riding Vettori out, going for takedowns, Vettori was tough to take down, and he really just never accepted bottom for the entire 15 minutes. And that fight is very, very relevant because Ferreira and Carlos Jr. are really similar fighters. I think that the fight with Vettori and Carlos Jr. is very similar to how this fight will go, with just a little bit of a change for Vettori. And I think that Vettori will win this fight. I think that Ferreira will probably get Vettori down to the mat with a takedown, but Vettori will bounce right back up to his feet. He is not going to accept bottom. He's not going to let Ferreira put him on his back and keep him there. And then once it gets back to the feet, I really favor Vettori to put the pressure on Ferreira, wear Ferreira down, just like Ian Heinisch did. He's going to be marching forward, outstriking Ferreira, stuffing takedowns, getting back up to his feet if he does get taken down, reverse in position if he gets put on his back. Vettori's got very strong hips. He's got good wrestling, good takedown defense, and I think that he will be able to avoid the top position of Ferreira in this one, and I believe that he will win a decision. I think Vettori will be in better shape. I think that he's the much younger fighter. He's had 15 months to take off and improve his game. I'm sure he's coming into the spot much improved. While Ferreira, coming off that loss where he was really outclassed in the grappling, the striking, the wrestling, everything, and he's getting older, he's getting up there in age. I think that this spot really favors Vettori. I think he's going to come back from this layoff and put on a very nice performance and get that 29-28 decision victory over Ferreira. The next fight takes place in the middleweight division. We have Karl Roberson, who is 7-2, taking on Wellington Turman, who is 15-2. The opening betting line for this one was Roberson minus 155, Turman plus 115. Right now we are seeing Roberson minus 225, Turman plus 185. So another short notice replacement fight. Wellington Turman coming in here, replacing John Phillips in this spot. And Turman is a very well-rounded fighter. I've been, impressed of what I've seen with him so far. He's a prospect coming out of Brazil, making his UFC debut in this one. He likes throwing a lot of flashy techniques on the feet, spinning back kicks and flying techniques and all different types of crazy stuff. He doesn't throw with too much power, although he did rock his last opponent with a left hook and take his back and get a rear naked choke. And, it was a very nice performance from Turman in that one. His go-to takedown is getting that body lock and trying to get that inside trip takedown, and he likes to do it against the cage, so he gets you down to the ground, and when you try to crawl back to your knees to get to your feet against the cage, Turman likes taking your back and trying to choke you out. Although Turman does have most of his wins by submission, he's not very dominant on the ground. When he fought Rodrigues Urso was able to just muscle his way into top position and reverse the position on Turman a few times, which is sometimes unavoidable. Sometimes some juicehead Brazilian guy is just gonna be able to reverse position on you, and you're not gonna be able to do anything about it. But Turman just, even though he's well-rounded, it just doesn't seem like he really thrives in one area. It seems like he's got decent striking, decent grappling, decent submissions, but not one area where he really shines in, especially one area where I think that he's better than Karl Roberson at. Roberson is a very fast, technical southpaw. He's got good knees and elbows in the clinch. He throws real power on the feet. If you try to take him down, he'll hit you on the side of the head with some elbows from hell. That's how he knocked out Ryan Spann on the Contender Series. He rocked Teixeira real bad with those elbows, and when he fought him a few months ago, almost had Teixeira out, but was somehow ended up on bottom. Teixeira got mount, and Teixeira was able to arm triangle Karl Roberson. But both of Karl Roberson's losses in his MMA career have come by way of arm triangle from Cesar Ferreira and Glover Teixeira. Now, those two guys are high-level jiu-jitsu black belts, and I do not think that Turman is on that level. So I don't think Roberson has to be too worried about the submission threat in this one. I just see Roberson being a little bit better than Turman everywhere. I think that Roberson is very skilled on the ground, and we saw that the way he took down Darren Stewart, took his back and got that rear naked choke in that fight. So I see this fight going on the feet. I see Roberson having a big edge on the feet. I think that he'll have the technique edge, the power edge, and I think that Roberson has a good chance at knocking Turman out on the feet. If this fight ends up on the floor, it should be a little more competitive, but ultimately I think that Roberson will be able to stay safe, avoid submission, get back to his feet. Maybe Turman can ride out some rounds in top control and win this fight on the scorecards. But I really favor Roberson to get this one done. I'm going to go with Roberson by knockout in round 2. The next fight takes place in the featherweight division. We have Josh Emmett, who is 14-2, taking on Mirsad Bektic, who is 13-1. The opening betting line for this one was Bektic, the favorite, minus 185, Emmett plus 145. Right now we are seeing Bektic minus 160, Emmett plus 140. So line margins tighten up. 2-weight action coming in on this fight. So starting things off with Emmett, we got just a powerhouse of a human being. This guy, he looks very weird. He's got a very short, stocky frame, absolutely jacked, and he has got some power in his punches. And we saw that the way he knocked out Michael Johnson that last fight, just one punch, stiff as a board, KO'd. That's that power that Josh Emmett has. Now, the problem with Emmett is that he has a hard time landing that power shot. He doesn't really close distance too well. He has some trouble with long, rangy guys like Michael Johnson. Rounds 1 and 2, Johnson was keeping him at range, outstriking him with long, straight punches. and was on his way to winning a decision, but Emmett made some necessary adjustments, started landing a little more on Johnson, and eventually knocked out Johnson with an overhand right. He was faking takedowns all fight. He was going for takedowns and throwing punches, and he threw a beautiful feint jab, and he faked that takedown, and he blasted Johnson with an overhand right, just knocking him out stiff. So Emmett has got massive power in his hands. He rocked Jeremy Stephens with a punch, wasn't able to finish him, and eventually got finished himself in round 2 of that fight. He knocked out Ricardo Lamas with the left hook. He's got power in both hands. He knocked out Lamas with the left hand. He knocked out Michael Johnson with the right hand, and both of those guys were stiff as a board. So it seems like he's got equal bricks in both of his hands. Now getting over to Bektic. We just got ourselves a very well-rounded fighter in this one. Bektic likes winning fights by mixing up his striking, his clinching, his takedowns, his top position. He likes using it all, and that's kind of a new strategy out of him that we saw in the Lamas fight, where he would strike with Lamas for a minute, then he would clinch with him, then he'd take Lamas down, and he, very impressive taking Lamas down, keeping Lamas on his back, avoiding the submission, the guillotine attempts of Lamas, because Lamas is a great grappler with a great guillotine. So it's really dangerous offensive wrestling, Lamas. But Bektic did it, and he won the fight dominantly with it, even though somehow a judge gave that one split decision. So Bektic can swing a little wild on the feet. He can be a little overzealous. He tried to finish in Darren Elkins and blew his load trying to finish him, and eventually gassed out and was finished in round 3 in his only loss. And that's why Bektic made those adjustments and was playing the fight so safe versus Lamas, where he was kind of stalling at times, where the referee was giving him a lot of warnings for encouraging him to work against the cage and to advance the position. But Bektic was just trying to stay safe, not get knocked out again, conserve his gas tank, and he did so, and he won by decision. So look for Bektic to get a little more comfortable and to start, getting his confidence back about him ever since he suffered his first loss to Darren Elkins. Even though that fight was 2 years ago, I still think that Bektic is recovering. He did pick up that quick knockout victory over Giudafi Pepe, or with that straight right hand to the body, and he did get that decision victory over Lamas. But I still don't think he's back to that same fighter that he was before the Elkins loss. I still think he's playing it safe and really getting his wits back about him. And he's going to have to do that here against Emmett, because he knows how dangerous of an opponent Emmett is. Emmett just can knock you out at any time. He was on his way to losing that fight 29-28, and even though there was 1 minute left on the clock, Emmett still knocked Michael Johnson out cold. So I see Bektic Bektic's going to want to keep this fight in the clinch. He's going to look to try to take down Emmett. I don't think he's going to want to try to trade at range with Emmett, because even though Bektic is a good striker, I don't think he's good enough of a striker to avoid that power shot for the whole 15 minutes. I think that if this fight stays in the feet and they're trading punches or they're striking back and forth the entire time, I think that it's inevitable that Emmett touches the chin of Bektic at some point and possibly puts him out like he has his past opponents. So I think that Bektic will have trouble clinching with Emmett, because Emmett is just so strong. He can, get underhooks and reverse position on you. Emmett's got a great wrestling base. He's low to the ground, got a great center of gravity. I think he's going to be hard to take down. So I don't see Bektic having that success with the takedowns and the clinching like he's used to. And that will leave this fight to play out in the striking range, where I think Emmett is just always dangerous. I know Emmett is always dangerous. He proved that last fight. And I don't see Bektic having the footwork or the defense to completely avoid that knockout for the entire fight. So at some point, I think Bektic starts out fast and starts winning the fight, but eventually, as the fight goes on, I think that Emmett will touch the chin and put Bektic out with the punch, just like he did versus Michael Johnson last fight. Maybe I'm going off of some recency bias, because that's how Emmett won his last fight. Maybe I'm falling in love with the plus 145 price tag next to Emmett's name, but I'm picking Emmett to win this one by knockout, and I have a bet on him as well. I'll advise all my bets at the end of the once I'm done analyzing the main event. I'll tell you all the bets and the amounts, the prices, everything. So Moving on to the co-main event of the evening, we have Uriah Faber, who is 34-10, taking on Ricky Simón, who is 15-1. The opening betting line for this one was Simón, the minus 195 favorite, to Faber plus 155. Right now we are seeing Simón minus 350 to Faber plus 290. So the legend, the California kid, Uriah Faber, coming back for one last fight despite him retiring 2.5 years ago, and he is not getting an easy matchup in this one at all. So we'll start things off with Faber, just going off of his last fight, because that's the only fight I really refresh my memory of watching. So he has always had trouble with leg kicks, and even in that fight with Brad Pickett, he was getting hit with a few leg kicks. So look for Simón to attack those in this fight because he has good leg kicks of his own. Faber's grappling looked really on point in that fight with Brad Pickett. He was hitting offensive takedowns. He was looking good in the scrambles. He wasn't keeping Pickett on his back. Pickett was scrambling back to his feet, but Faber was in control the entire time. He was never really in a compromising position on the ground. He looked real smooth on the ground with his back takes, his getting mount, his offensive takedowns. Everything looked really good, and he actually at one point dropped Brad Pickett with the left hook as well. His boxing looked solid, just an all-around, probably one of the best performances that Faber had in years, and it was in his last fight, in that retirement fight, the last time he fought in Sacramento. So, he's always had a great guillotine. He's always been a great pressure fighter, but who knows what his athletic abilities will be like coming in here off of this 2.5-year layoff. He was training for that grappling match with Nicky Ryan lately, so I'm sure he'll be in shape. I'm sure that he will be well prepared for this fight, but I just think that he has the cards stacked against him here with this opponent, Ricky Simón. So Simón is just a relentless wrestler, where he has great offensive wrestling and defensive wrestling. The fight with Moraes stands out as, him never accepting bottom, him being hard to take down, him constantly Grammy rolling and trying to get back to his feet. And he did so successfully, and eventually he came on strong in round 3 and had that infamous choke versus Moraes, where he won that fight via technical submission or something like that. But he might have lost that fight if it went to the scorecards, because I believe Moraes had won rounds 1 and 2 of that fight. And really, that was Moraes just grabbing a hold of Simón, and Simón not being able to break the body lock, just not being able to get out of Moraes' grips. And even though Moraes wasn't having much success with the takedowns, he was still controlling where the fight took place. So that's why he won rounds 1 and 2 of that fight. But Simón has just looked better and better in his most recent fights. Against Montel Jackson, he dominated that fight. Jackson came in a really highly touted prospect, had a huge, long reach, was great striking, good submissions, as we since so learned, him picking up a few nice victories. But Simón just took him down relentlessly and really showcased his well-rounded game in that one. In the Hani Yahya fight, he sprawled and brawled just magnificently. He stuffed all of Yaya's takedowns. He was so much faster than Yahya. He avoided the grappling and the submissions of Yahya easily. He took down Yahya every time he even came close to attempting it. He would duck his shoulder and Yahya would end up on his back. And Simón really showed his good striking in that fight as well. He was outboxing Yahya. He did get caught with a few punches, maybe rocked a few times by Yahya as well. So he's got a little bit of a hole in his boxing defense and maybe his chin. And that's really where Faber could possibly catch him here. Faber could try to rock Simón with a punch, because if Faber tries to offensively wrestle, Simón will stuff his shots. He will scramble to top position. He'll get it back to striking range. If Simón tries to offensive wrestle, I think that he will get Faber down and he will control where the fight takes place. He will be in top position the entire time. So really, where the fight is most even will be in the striking, where Faber has a chance at landing a power punch and catching the chin of Simón. But I think that the speed is just going to be too much for Faber. I see Simón being leaps and bounds ahead of Faber in the speed. We saw that in the last fight against Yaya. He was just so much quicker. The hand speed, the takedown defense, the scrambles, just had Yaya beat in speed by miles. So I see that being the deciding factor here. I think Simone is more athletic. He is faster. He has been more active, has the better wrestling. At this point in his career, might even have the better boxing because we haven't seen Faber in so long. So I got in a big bet on Ricky Simone while he was minus 190. There is value all over him when he was there, but where it's at now, minus 350, it's a little bit wide. I think that the widest I would cap Simone is minus 300 with Faber at plus 250. So if you want to take a value bet on Faber at plus 290, go ahead and do so. It'll be fun to cheer for the California kid, and it'll be fun to see him back in the octagon. Wish the UFC would have given him a little easier of a matchup. Maybe see him get a win in his home country or his home town of Sacramento. But honestly, I think what the UFC is doing is they heard Faber was coming back for a fight. They know Simone is an incredible prospect, so they want to get Simone a good win on his record, and this is a good way of doing so. It's getting exposure of getting a win over Faber. So I'm gonna pick Simone to win a decision 30-27 in dominating fashion. Now, moving along to the main event of the evening in the women's bantamweight division, we have Aspen Ladd, who is undefeated at 8-0, taking on Germaine de Randamie, who is 8-3. The opening betting line of this one was Ladd minus 130, de Randamie minus 110. Right now, we are seeing Ladd minus 170, de Randamie plus 150. So much more action coming in on Aspen Ladd's way. And in this one, we got ourselves striker versus grappler. Ladd is the grappler in this one. She's got the good takedowns, good top control, good ground and pound, back takes, good pressure on top. Her ground and pound is really good. She's finished a few of her opponents with it, like Lena Landsberg and Tanya Evinger in the UFC so far. Ladd's striking is not very good. Her defense is almost non-existent. She keeps her head on the center line the entire time, and she kind of gets lit up with punches, and what she did against Sijara Eubanks. And Ladd also struggles in the clinch. She had a very competitive clinch battle with Lena Landsberg where she was eating a lot of knees to the stomach and was not able to get her takedowns going in rounds 1 versus Landsberg. Now, she eventually did get the double leg takedown in round 2 and smashed Landsberg to get the ground and pound finish, but she struggled in the clinch versus Landsberg. She also struggled with the boxing of Sijara Eubank in their most recent fight. She was lit up with punches at the end of round 1. In round 3, she ate something like 54, I think Sijara landed 54 punches, but Ladd landed 40 punches of her own too, so it was a really high output back and forth round 3. I thought Sijara won round 3. I thought Sijara won round 1. I thought Ladd won round 2 10-8, so I scored the fight as a draw, but the judges disagreed and they scored it to Ladd as anyway. So Ladd on the feet, her defense is bad, her footwork is bad. She doesn't really move her head. She's constantly throwing out offensive punches, but her defense, she's not just thinking much about. So getting over to de Randamie, she's a great kickboxer. She's got good straight punches. She's strong in the clinch, good knees in the clinch, good head kicks as well. You know, her striking is just magnificent. And her takedown defense is also really good. Her past 3 opponents have tried to take her down 22 times, and 22 times they have failed. Now, they're not the most high-level grapplers, in being Raquel Pennington, who went 0-8. Holly Holm also attempted a bunch of takedowns on her, and then a woman by the name of Anna Elmrose, who I don't even know, also tried to take her down but was unsuccessful. So de Randamie started her career as a kickboxer, and her kickboxing is really her bread and butter, but she has really worked hard on her takedown defense, and it shows that 22 of her most recent takedown attempts have been stuffed. So with that statistic in mind, and with the way that I see the Ladd's striking, I really favor Germaine de Randamie in this matchup. I think that on the feet, Germaine's going to be lighting Ladd up with punches on the feet. And a very interesting note that I wrote down about Germaine is that in her fight against Raquel Pennington, she adopted a very boxing-centric stance where she was her legs were wide, she was low to the ground, and she was throwing all punches for the first round because she knew Raquel's takedown attempts were coming. I expect her to do the same versus Aspen Ladd. She's going to be low to the ground and only throwing punches, and she should be good. She should be able to outbox Aspen Ladd easily. I think she's just leaps and bounds ahead of Aspen Ladd. We saw Aspen Ladd's sloppy boxing with no defense like 2 or 3 months ago. There's no way that she improved that striking enough to compete with Germaine de Randamie in that amount of time. So on the feet, I see Germaine lighten Ladd up with punches early, drawing the takedown attempt out of Ladd. And I think Germaine will stuff the takedowns early. I think that she will dominate the clinch versus Ladd, land in knees and elbows. And I think that she will eventually just outstrike Ladd for as long as the fight goes. It could go to the decision. I could even see Germaine de Randamie getting a stoppage victory at some point from just the accumulated damage. Now, Ladd certainly does have a path to victory in this fight. She's minus 170 for a reason, because her takedowns are powerful, her top position is powerful, her ground and pound is powerful. She's a very talented ground fighter, but she's going against one of the women with the best takedown defense in the division. She's also going against one of the women with a great clinch, great kickboxing, and I think Ladd is just in for a little too much too soon in this one. She's 3-0 in the UFC with victories over Landsberg, Evinger, and Eubanks, but Germaine de Randamie has been fighting MMA for so much longer than her, and she's been kickboxing for even longer. You know, Germaine de Randamie's pro fighting career has been going back probably 15-20 years, while Aspen Ladd is only 24 years old, only making her amateur debut back in 2013. So a massive experience advantage for de Randamie. I think de Randamie comes out here and stuffs the early takedowns of Aspen Ladd and just proceeds to outstrike Ladd on the feet, out clinch her, and do some significant damage on the feet. I could see de Randamie stopping her. I think that's the most likely outcome. I'm going to go with Germaine de Randamie by 3rd round TKO. I'm not totally counting Aspen Ladd out. I think that if she gets de Randamie down in round 1, she has a chance at winning the fight. She could get her down, maybe knock her out with ground and pound, maybe submit her, maybe win 3 rounds with top position. But with the way that Ladd's cardio looked versus Sajara, she looked decent in round 3. It looks like she had a lot left in the tank, but she wasn't grappling. She really was just primarily boxing in round 3 versus Sajara Eubanks, and she's not going to be able to stand and trade with Germaine de Randamie. De Randamie is just going to light her up at boxing range. So the one thing that de Randamie did in that Pennington fight is once she stuffed a few takedowns, and once she started to outbox Pennington, then she started adding the kicks in. She was just making sure that she was safe first, wasn't going to get taken down off of any kicks. And then as the fight went on, that's when Germaine de Randamie started throwing leg kicks, started hitting her high kicks, and really finding her range. So the longer this fight goes, the more I favor de Randamie. I think on the scorecards, de Randamie has the 5-round experience. I got to favor her if the fight goes to the decision. And the only path I see for Ladd is getting that takedown in round 1, doing some damage, getting de Randamie tired, and tired enough to not be able to stuff the takedowns in rounds 2 and 3. Maybe Ladd will be able to finish her in rounds 1, 2, or 3. Maybe she'll be able to win the rounds and win it on the scorecards. I just don't see it, man. I'm loving Germaine de Randamie's price at plus 150, and I'm picking her to win this fight by 3rd round TKO. Now that's going to do it for the 12th fight UFC Sacramento card. So now let's get down to all of the bets I have. I did tweet them out on my Twitter account earlier. You can follow me at UFO_UFC. That is UFO_UFC. And you can find all my thoughts on there. So starting things off, we got Brianna Van Buren, 1.7 units at a price of minus 112. We got 1 unit on Jonathan Martinez at plus 128. 2 units on Ryan Hall at minus 106. 1.7 units on Juliana Pena at minus 164. 1.5 units on Andre Fili at plus 125. 1 unit on Josh Emmett at plus 145, 3.3 units on Ricky Simone at minus 190, 1 unit on Jermaine Randamie's opener at minus 110, and 1 unit on Jermaine Randamie as the plus 150 underdog. So I got myself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fighters that I have bets on their money line. It should be a hell of a card. I'm really expecting some good results for this one. It should be some real close matchups. Hope you got some valuable information and advice from the podcast. Maybe got some betting tips as well. And we will see you all next week. Everybody enjoy the card and have a good weekend. Peace.